I'm obviously on the back end of my career. And so what I've grown up with in this business with the old traditional, scholarships, tuition fees, room, board, and books, and that's it, right? Now this is a different deal. And so for me, I have to think differently. I have to get out of my comfort zone and say, okay, we have to approach this business way differently than we have in the past.
When will alcohol be sold throughout Bill's Night Family Stadium?
There it is. We're still talking about it, but it's another one of these conversations that we have to have because it's a revenue generator. So I think it's time for us to really sit down and nail this decision, which direction we're going to go, but it's probably sooner rather than later.
What's the hardest part about being an athletic director at a Power 5 institution? K-State family, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cats Talk, hosted by Wildcat NIL. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Be sure to like, comment, or subscribe wherever you find your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Please also follow us on social media. Your support makes it so we can continue to put out these podcast episodes. If you're looking for more information on NIL, please visit www.catsnil.com. Thanks for your support, and go Cats. Hey K-State family, welcome to this episode of Cats Talk, hosted by Wildcat NIL. I'm your host, Curry Sexton. On this podcast, we'll bring you the most influential people at K-State, behind-the-scenes access to those people. Today, we're thrilled to be joined by our athletics director, Gene Taylor. Gene, thanks for joining us.
When you said influential, I was looking around to see who you're talking about.
So let's start this off on a light note. Big news for the Taylor family recently. Got your daughter Casey married here in the middle part of July. Congrats on that. How was the wedding?
The wedding was awesome. It was a lot of fun. It was a couple of events around the wedding. You know how it is. You get to see a lot of friends and family, and just from a wedding perspective, it went about as well as anybody could expect. And Casey and Bryce did a lot of the work. We were just kind of there, and it was really just a really fun wedding with a lot of folks we hadn't seen in a long time.
Awesome. I heard that no shortage of fun was had that weekend.
There was no shortage of fun, and it even went into Saturday and around the pool, and it looked like a Vegas pool party at our backyard.
I'm sure you were ready for that weekend to be over with.
There was somebody that just keeps blowing us off on not showing up, so he'll know who I'm talking about.
That's funny. Other than that, really just a quiet summer in college athletics, huh?
Yeah, it's been pretty boring.
Yeah, just your standard.
A lot of stuff going on.
Exactly, just your standard quiet summer. So obviously here, we're sitting here early August, and just within the past couple of days, last Friday, a proposed settlement agreement was filed in the Northern District of California in the House v. NCAA case that speaks to revenue sharing that's going to come down the pike here within probably the next 12 to 14 months, depending on if everything goes through. What can you tell us about that lawsuit, that settlement agreement, and how it may impact us here at K-State?
Curry, that's a great question, and I think, unfortunately, there's probably more questions out there than we have answers to right now, and we're trying to learn as much as we can. We have probably weekly calls with the Big 12, both from an AD's only call with commissioner, and then our legal counsel from the Big 12. We've had a couple of calls with presidents and chancellors. On the basic, lawsuit, there's a back pay of $2.8 billion that are going to athletes from 2016 and up until today. And then there's this revenue share of 22% or up to 22%, which equates to about $21.5 million per school that they could revenue share up to. And then they've adjusted scholarship limits in terms of where we can, and within those limits, we can give up to that full amount of limit. For instance, football is set right now, or at least going to be set at 105 football players. you could give up to 105 scholarships. Right now we give 85. How does that affect gender equity in the women's sports, et cetera? So, there's still a lot of stuff going on, and just trying to figure out institutionally how we're going to approach it and what's the best way to do that. We've got a lot of conversations upcoming with our coaches. We have more conversations coming up with the Big 12 and the legal team, just to get our hands around what is the flexibility we have. Is this going to be some conference-driven decisions? Because conference-wide we can make without being colluding, I guess is the word they use. And so we could say, the conferences can say, no, we're only going to give this many scholarships. So there's a lot of stuff that are still unknown that we just have to continue to work through. But we have to get answers pretty soon.
Absolutely.
You get basketball recruiting that starts in November, signing days in November with some of our sports. Football's going to open up in December. We have to have these answers, and it's coming at us fast and furious.
Absolutely. I don't envy you or anybody in your position. So I know a lot of decisions to be made, and there's still a lot, like you said, a lot of information that we don't know. So assuming that this settlement agreement is approved by the court and that it takes effect, when will revenue sharing and some of these other changes, when will that all take effect?
My understanding is that it's September of 2025. And then again, how are we going to share the revenue is still up for discussion and debate in some cases, whether we're going to share it equitably amongst both men and women in terms of 50-50 revenue share, or are we going to give the majority of the revenue share to the sports that generate the revenue, which is football and basketball. That the back pay that's how it's going to be done. It's going to be, I think, 75% to football and 15% to men's basketball, and then the rest to women's basketball and the other sports. And so if that's the case, then okay, we need to figure that out. But some of those decisions may not be ours. They may be court decisions. They may be the folks in Washington, D.C. from the OCR standpoint. So again, those are some unknowns, but we got to try to plan for both and figure out which direction we would go.
Absolutely. So now you talked about the number in year one being around $21.5 million. And then, so that is the revenue sharing number. And then is it accurate to say that you back Alston payments out of that? And then in scholarship payments, additional scholarships as well before you get to that actual revenue sharing figure?
That's an option that they give in the settlement apparently is we're currently giving Alston money to athletes. So if we were to give more, you can give up to $2.5 million that would count towards your revenue share. So
got it.
And then you can end up to $2.5 million in scholarships. So if we give an additional $2.5 million in scholarships, then that number would be around $18 million. And so you just kind of keep taking that back. But again, all of that is kind of a collection of decisions that we have to make. Well, if we do this, how does it affect this? Do the coaches want more revenue share money and not as many scholarships? And so that's why we've got to get some answers and guidance really from our conference folks and our attorneys, so then we can sit down with coaches and say, okay, if we do this, which direction do you want to go? Or we can do this. So there's still a lot of stuff we have to get figured out.
Absolutely. Another decision that has to be made, I think, is what level do we revenue share? And at this point, would you say that K-State plans to revenue share at the maximum amount?
That's certainly our plan. And again, how do we get there is going to be, it's going to be a combination of dollars that we generate from within the department. Maybe there might be some conference additional dollars coming in. I know that, our commissioner's looking at some options to increase our revenue distribution from the conference. And then, going to our donors and sitting down with donors and telling them the story that this is kind of our new capital campaign over the next several years. And would they be willing to help us? And so there's a lot of discussions we have to have. And so our goal is to try to get there, and whether we get there all at once or over time. But, our coaches are looking at us to say, guys, we if we don't, it's going to be a recruiting disadvantage.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of schools, to be honest with you, in my conversations with ADs, that they're not sure they're going to go right to the full amount. They may take, baby steps and get there over time. But so it's just really, it's not a clear-cut answer for anybody right now. And it's a big number. It's, we used to worry about, the Alston money. Oh, my goodness, how are we going to pay for that? Oh, we're going to feed them how are we going to pay for that? Well, we figured it out. Well, $21 million is a different number. It's a game changer.
Absolutely. It's a little different than the $2 or $3 million Alston figure,
and
right?
That's still a lot of money if you
is.
think about it. But we've been able to find those dollars and make those changes. And this one is very concerning is maybe not the right word, but it's definitely it's changing this industry a great deal.
The task is much greater than going and finding $2 or $3 million.
It's not just a K-State issue. It is Ohio State, Texas, you name it. They're all sitting there. My AD colleagues are sitting there going, this is not going to be easy to
Absolutely.
make happen.
And I think most people know this, and we are prideful of the fact that most years we operate in the black, but most athletic departments lose money or make little to nothing on a year-to-year basis. So you talked about, different. We're going to have to find ways to find this $21 million. So you mentioned some possibilities and creating new revenue streams. We've heard rumors that the Big 12 may have a naming rights partner at some point. Do you think there will come a day when there's corporate logos on K-State football uniforms or corporate logos on our football field? What are the chances of that?
Well, we've already approved the corporate logos on the field. So you've got the 225-yard line that is for the conference, and then we've never been able to do a midfield logo or the other 25-yard lines, and that's been approved. So we're working with our Learfield partners to see what's the best option. Is it a local option or is it a national brand? But absolutely, that's going to be additional revenue. And then we have talked about patches on jerseys, both football, basketball. And again, those are opportunities that we need to pursue. So I've been saying this, I'm obviously on the back end of my career. And so what I've grown up with in this business with the old traditional scholarships, tuition fees, room, board, and books, and that's it, right? And then we start easing into some of these other, which are great benefits for athletes, whether it's NIL or Alston money, because they all deserve it. Now this is a different deal, and so for me, I have to think differently. I have to get out of my comfort zone and say, okay, we have to approach this business way differently than we have in the past, and look at outside income from other sources, whether that's, third-party equity investments, whether that's doing things on our uniforms and selling our product out there more than we've ever done. And we really have to get outside of our comfort zone and think of things in a way different fashion in order to manage this and make it work. And
you made a good reference there. You referred to it as this business, and that's really what it's become, right? I mean, it's always been a business in some form, but the focus has always been on scholarships and creating educational opportunities, and now it is truly becoming a commercialized business. Is that accurate?
It really is, and I still think I don't want to lose the fact that these young men and women are coming here and they're still going to get a degree, and they're still going to class, and they're still going to walk out of here. And many of them walk out of here before their 4 years with a degree, and some of them walking out here with master's degrees or secondary degrees. And to me, that's what we still have to remember the business we're in. But at the end of the day, these men and women are coming here. They want to still compete at the highest level. Yes, they're being compensated differently than they ever have been, but they're still going out to put on the K-State uniform and go out and win a conference championship and possibly go into the NCAA tournaments and go as far as they can. And so that's what I have to take a step back and remember. At the end of the day, they're still young men and women that are getting their degrees. They're playing at the highest level. They're still competing and loving K-State. And yes, they're getting compensated for that. And they're still the same great individuals that we're recruiting that come here because they just want to play the sport.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned, you talk about the changes and having to change your mindset. We talk about the past like it's so long ago, but sitting here in August of 24, it was 3-4 years ago, just over 3 years ago when books, tuition, room and board, some other miscellaneous benefits was the scholarship, the opportunity at a school like Kansas State. And in a short time, we've gone from 0 to 100. And so I know that these changes are all coming fast and furious. And so applaud you guys for the job that you're doing, staying on top of it and keeping us in the conversation.
I think, Curry, the other thing that, a lot of our fans know, and I don't want to lose sight of this, is we are self-funded, and we're one of the few athletic programs in the country that are. We don't get tuition dollars. We don't get tuition discounts. We don't get state dollars. We get no student fees or university fees. And so that does challenge us more. And so when we talk about how are we going to do this, from a non-traditional ways, we have to look into that. A lot of schools do get support from their university, and I'm not saying that the university doesn't want to. They would love to, but they've got other priorities as well, and we've been able to manage very successfully on our own, and we're going to need to continue to do that.
Now, how crucial is it that you look across the country and just down the road in other schools, our counterparts are still trying to engage in massive capital campaign projects.
That's a great point.
How crucial is it that you and your predecessors and John Curry and his administration were able to get these facilities to where they are now?
I tell that to people all the time, and I've had my colleagues come up to me and say, "You guys are so fortunate, because if you look at our facilities from top to bottom, there's still a couple of things we'd love to do. We'd love to help men and women's golf and tennis, but those aren't these massive 50, 60, 100 million. We just finished a $100-some million building champions campaign that we built the volleyball Olympic training center, the Shamrock Zone, the new indoor football, and so our stadium's been upgraded. Like you said, John Curry came in and did a great job with raising money and building facilities. So we don't have that, and that's why we can tell our donors, we're probably not going to come back to you anytime soon with these massive capital campaigns. And that's why I said this would be our capital campaign we would like for you to consider taking part in. And so we're very fortunate. And we've always been very fortunate that our donors take so good care of us. But, a lot of my colleagues have both that they are having to manage, and it's not going to be easy.
Absolutely. A couple more questions before we get off this topic, but two common questions that you're seeing out there in social media and other places. Is there a possibility that sports get cut because of revenue sharing? Is that on the table?
It's not even been anything that I've entertained or we've entertained. It's not something that I believe in. I think, unless the whole, thing falls apart, and, obviously during COVID, there was a lot of conversation across the country, and we never entered any of our conversations. So no, here at K-State, we have the minimum at 16, and we're going to keep the minimum, no question about it.
Now, last one on the revenue sharing front is private equity an option? Well,
I mentioned it earlier. I think third-party investments into our athletic program is something we have to look into, whether it works or not. It's a different deal. It's an expensive form of money, but I think the groups that are out there are trying to understand the college landscape and how they might be able to make it work, knowing that we operate differently than the professional world. It's heavily involved in the professional world right now, equity investments. So it's certainly something we're going to look at and talk to and explore the options. But it's certainly, one of those things that we have to consider outside of the normal structure that we've been working in the past.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears to realignment. Fortunately, I guess, compared to years past, it's been fairly quiet this summer. I know there's been a lot going on behind the scenes with some of the lawsuits and other things, but not a lot of movement this summer in terms of new movement. But as from a Big 12 perspective, last year we added 4 schools. We added BYU and Cincinnati and UCF and Houston. And this year we're adding as of July 1, we added Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. How do you feel about the current state of our conference? How excited are you to welcome some of these new schools?
I'm really looking forward to it. I was obviously here, and I think of Jamie Pollard, who was at Iowa State. He's been there a long time and seen a lot of iterations of the Big 12 of the Missouris leaving and the Texas A&Ms and the Nebraskas, and then they bring in TCU and some of the schools, and for us at Kansas State, we're one of the legacy members that have been. And so when Oklahoma and Texas left, it was very nerve-wracking as schools were being mentioned in other conferences. We weren't one of them. And when you think of what happened with the Pac-12 and the fact you've got 2 great institutions in Washington State and Oregon State that kind of hanging out there by themselves, we're much stronger today than we were 4 years ago, and even stronger now with the addition of the 4 corner schools, as we're calling them. I think Bob Bowlesby did a great job and really kept this conference from falling apart by bringing in the Cincinnati and Houston, that group. And then Brett's come in and do a phenomenal job. So I think we're positioned very well. And as we look for the future of TV revenues, so I think people are looking at the Big 12. This conference is one of the best there is in basketball. There's no question about that. And you just added Arizona and Utah. And then football's always been a gauntlet to go through. So and other sports as well, women's basketball, baseball, you name it. We were just one of the better conferences in the country. So I think we're positioned very well. Now, is realignment done? I don't know. Everybody's looking at what's going on in the ACC and their lawsuits, and is there any other opportunities? Well, nothing that we've talked about formally, but I guarantee you that if something breaks, we're going to certainly be in the conversation of people wanting to join the Big 12 at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to your point, Commissioner Yormark has done a great job of helping us be in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
When a school like a Clemson or a Florida State starts to maybe look for a new home. So, it's been, sitting here, 2-3 years ago in Oklahoma and Texas, when that news broke, I think it was fair to sit there as a K-State fan and think, are we going to the Mountain West? What does our future look like? And fortunately, some decisions have been made that have placed us. I think we're the third best conference in America.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think as we get into this, the new world of a 12-team expansion of playoffs, and we don't. The thing I worry about is we're so strong that we beat each other up, and it might limit our opportunities. But I think you're going to see 2 and sometimes 3 teams in the college football playoffs from this conference.
We'll dive deeper into this conversation after the break. But before then, I want to tell you about our good friends at Home Field Apparel. Get on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your hands on some of Home Field's K-State selection of over 40 items that are thoughtfully created by Home Field's team. I personally have several pieces from their K-State selection, and I'm wearing my favorite Home Field sweatshirt today, featuring an old school Willie the Wildcat. Home Field Apparel is incredibly high quality and comfortable apparel, and there's something for everybody at homefieldapparel.com. Be sure to use the promo code CATSNIL24 when you check out to get 10% off your order. And when you use that promo code, Home Field will donate 10% of your order back to Wildcat NIL so we can support K-State student athletes. Again, get on over to homefieldapparel.com today and use the promo code CATSNIL24.
A more fun question: Is there a new football road venue that you're most looking forward to traveling to this fall?
I've been to Provo, but I've never been to their athletic facilities, and I hear that environment's pretty fun. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, obviously a little known fact is even though they're coming here this year, I am an Arizona State grad. I think it'll be fun to go back there in a couple of years and be back in my alma mater, so to speak. But I think I've never been to Colorado. I know a lot of our fans have been, and we go there this year, and I think that'll be a great atmosphere. Here it's beautiful up there. But my dad's a Colorado grad, although he's no longer with us anymore. But there's some pretty fun stuff that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I agree. Some of those Western
McHale
schools.
Center in basketball, right?
Absolutely.
That's an unbelievable place to go play basketball.
Yeah.
And so those will be some fun venues I'm looking forward to.
We just had Coleman Hawkins in here right before you came in and talked about his transition to our conference, and he made the comment. He said, "I'm excited to play in a conference where every game is a difficult game. Every team we play, I mean, this conference is a gauntlet. Especially really now adding Arizona, who's a perennial power. Colorado has a really good basketball program. Arizona State under Bobby Hurley has done some really good things.
Look at Houston last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cincinnati was really good.
Dogged schedule. So it's a fun time to be a part of the Big 12 conference. Last question on realignment. When does it stop? Do you foresee it stopping, or is it just something that looking over the past 30 years, it's always been present in college sports? Is it something that is always going to be there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I never say never, obviously. And you're right, realignment, if you think about it, Arizona State and Arizona were in the Mountain West forever. And they, if I go back, because I was part of that, when I was in college. So it's always been a part of college athletics over the years. But I do think, and again, maybe I'm naive, but when these conferences are getting to 18, and we're not gonna play everybody in our conference in football, and certainly not play everybody in basketball, and then you have conference tournaments, and those things really begun to get affected and make some things difficult when you're trying to lay out how this conference is, whether it's this conference or the Big Ten or the SEC. I mean, do they really want to become 20 and 24 member conferences? I don't know, unless I'm just being so naive, or do we just say, you know what? Gary Bard and I talked about this, and again, I don't know if it makes any sense, but you just take football and basketball and say, you know what, we're going to do the NFL model. We're going to play everybody across the country, and then the best teams will play, and then everything else is going to be regional. All our other Olympic sports, if you're on the eastern half, you're going to play these teams. If you're in the Midwestern part of the country, you're going to play here, southeastern part. And then, so maybe we're not conference driven in everything. There's football, men and women's basketball, and then conference driven based on regional. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but I just worry that these 18 and 20 team conferences really make things difficult for the fan base, makes it difficult for operation of a conference. So we'll see. But for me to sit here and say it's never going to happen again, I don't know that I can honestly believe
the
that.
Regionalization piece of it is interesting. You look at the Big Ten now, and you think of, football's a different story because they play once a week. But you think of an Olympic sport athlete from a UCLA going to play Rutgers on a weeknight, and think about the impact of that, not only on the athlete but on the fans and the coaches. I mean, it's just the loss of regionalization, I think, is an unfortunate one to college athletics.
And I think as the Big Ten or they have talked about, and we've talked about it here in the Big 12. How do we look at our scheduling for some of the Olympic sports a little differently so they can stay a little more regional? But I think it may take a greater effort collectively for us to figure that out.
Absolutely. Now, shifting gears to football, we're sitting here in the football complex. Here in about 2 hours, the team will be having its initial team meeting for its fall camp this year. How excited are you for the upcoming football season?
I always get excited just generally for football. I think there's kind of a fun buzz around the team this year. Obviously coming off a bowl victory last year against a pretty good North Carolina State team, and seeing some new faces. Obviously, one is our quarterback, who's apparently pretty good, Avery, and then just some of the new additions that we've learned about. I haven't seen him much. I didn't see him much in the spring ball. I've been watching him work out. Again, I think there's a lot of anticipation for what this team can be. And when I hear Coach Klieman in particular talk about the depth, is something that we haven't had before. When he's talking about playing, 8 or 9 defensive linemen and having a good core of linebackers and corners and safeties and, running backs. And so, I think there's going to be some newness too, right? We lost a really good offensive line, but we've got a lot of guys coming back that played a lot. So I think there's a pretty high, cautiously optimistic feel about this football team in particular.
Absolutely. Now, what are your thoughts? We talked about this earlier. You touched on it. What are your thoughts on the college football playoff expansion and how that may benefit someone like K-State?
I think it's awesome. I mean, obviously, I was fortunate enough to serve on the CFP committee as a 4-team conference, and I think there's still a lot of the same process that will take place because we always had to, pick the 1 through 25, and the top 12 always ended up in a New Year's Six bowl game, and so that was still very critical. I think the difference now is going to be when you look at these teams, you're going to be thinking, okay, who do I want to have a home team? And so it will creep in a little bit, but I think it's just, think about this. I mean, last year the country was probably looking at 4 or 5, maybe 6 teams. And we're like, okay, it's going to be these 4 undefeated teams or 5 undefeated teams. Now you're talking about 15, 16, maybe 20 teams that may have a chance. And what's going to be interesting is, your top 4 or 5 teams are going to be, 13-0, 12-1, and then there's going to be a bunch of 10-2s and 9-3s.
Absolutely.
That they're going to be pretty good football teams that now have a chance to make a run. So that's, to me, the excitement across the country for a lot more teams is really going to be fun to watch as we get towards the November time frame of the season.
Absolutely. Now, want to talk about Coach Klieman. Obviously, you guys have an extensive history together as friends, as colleagues, as a good friend of his, and as the person who hired him. How satisfying has it been for you to see the level of success that he's had here, following in the footsteps of a legend?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously it's very satisfying. I mean, obviously you make when you get a job and you're kind of knowing that you're going to have to replace a guy whose name's on the stadium and it's got a statue of him because, he was going to retire at some point, and you knew that going in. And it was a risky hire. I think a lot of people thought it was. I didn't think it was because I knew who Chris was, but I knew there was going to be an adjustment, right? I mean, it is different at this level, and there's a different recruiting, and so it took him a while to get there. And so to see him work through that, put together a great staff, and learn what it's going to take to be successful consistently here. It's been really, really enjoyable for me to see that. And I'm very, very proud of him.
Obviously, big jump for him coming from the FCS level, where he's a legend in his own right, to a Power 5 school. Did you have any doubt that he would have a strong level of success here?
I really didn't, and maybe that's my blind faith to a friend and a guy that I really got to. But when I watched him in North Dakota State come in as basically a defensive backs coach, ultimately became a defensive coordinator a year later. But how he adjusted, to not only in game but between games. When you make an FCS playoff, we played 16 games, and every week you played a different team. One week you'd be playing an option team, and the next week you're playing a spread team. And how he adjusted from a defensive coach, and then both in-game adjustments at halftime. And there were times that I thought, there's no way we're going to win this game. Georgia Southern was running up and down the field on us one year, and next thing you know, we shut them down and win the game. It was a classic FCS playoff game. But I knew he was a smart guy, and I knew he'd figure it out. I just didn't know how long it was going to take him, because I'll be honest with you, I don't think he'd probably tell you that when he got here, oh boy, a lot more staff, a lot more needs, figuring out what schools were doing to be successful. But I knew he was so committed and he was so driven, and the way he cares about the athletes and how honest and real that guy is. I knew from a recruiting perspective we were going to be fine once he got all of the basically tools and things that he needed to be out there and be successful. He's a consistent guy, week in and week out. He's not too high and too low. I think the players see that. I think they feel that when they go into a game. I think they're well prepared. So I knew he was going to be successful. I didn't know how long it was going to take.
Absolutely.
And it's turned out, I'm very, very proud of him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, as a Snyder guy and seeing what he's done so far, I think he takes there's a lot of similarities between the two in terms of how they approach or how they prepare, but seeing the way that he embraces his guys and loves his guys, I think is part of what makes him such a special coach.
I think one of the things that everybody was a little concerned about was, there's an aura of K-State football from Bill Snyder, a toughness, grittiness of how we're going to play the game of football. And they weren't sure that Chris would come in and do that. They wasn't sure he's going to just go all of a sudden and spread. But, there's still a lot of culture-based stuff that
Absolutely.
was very much like Coach Snyder built, of just this toughness. Yeah, we're going to run the football, but we're also going to do a lot of things. We're going to win with defense if we have to. And I think there's just a lot of belief in when we're going to go too far away from that. And I don't believe he has.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Coach Klieman is just one of the many coaches you've hired at K-State. You talk about somebody like Jerome Tang. Obviously, we've just hired a new track coach. Jason Mansfield had a great first season in the new arena over there. What is your approach to hiring coaches at K-State, and how have you been able to find such success in doing so?
Well, obviously, it's not just me. I mean, I rely heavily on the sport administrator and someone like Jill, who's been around here a long time. What I've always looked at, coaches that have, I'm not afraid to hire an assistant, to be honest with you, if they've been with the program a long time. And let's take Coach Klieman, for instance. He gets to North Dakota State, and he's part of a very, a three-time national championship program. And then he becomes a head coach. And one of the hardest things in this business is, it's one thing to build a program from a not successful team to a successful team. One of the most difficult things is continuing that success. People get lazy, people get comfortable, and he goes and wins 4 national championships. To me, I said that says a lot about him. So I would look for coaches who are part of a program that have gone from not successful to successful, a coach that's been a part of a program that's sustained success, even as an assistant. You're like Jerome Tang. Baylor was an awful situation when they took over, and he committed 19 years, and they became a national champion. And I watched him coach, and I saw his involvement was much more than just the guy that's got the game scout. He was involved heavily, and Scott Drew relied on him heavily during the games, and I watched that. And, Pete Hughes was at Oklahoma, and, Jason Mansfield, been a part of national championship programs everywhere he was an assistant. Travis, longtime assistant at Arkansas, a lot of success. You begin to learn on how to build a program, and so that's why I'm not afraid to hire either a veteran coach. But if you look at it, in my brain, there's a formula that's going to make a successful coach. Somebody that has been part of building a team and then maintaining that, or someone that comes in and is a part of a very successful program and is able to maintain that success over a long period of time. And to me, so far it's worked out.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about Coach Klieman replacing Coach Snyder. You've had to replace a number of coaches who are legendary or very long tenured. I mean, you just replaced Coach Revelto, legendary in the track and field space. Last year, you replaced Susie Fritz, who'd been at K-State for something like 20 years. How do you go about not only finding a great fit for K-State and our culture, but also taking into account the pressure of replacing somebody who's found immense success over a long period of time at a place like K-State?
Well, it's one of the things we talk about during the interview process. And you can kind of tell if somebody's a little nervous about stepping into that, right? I mean,
absolutely.
There was, again, when we interviewed for Coach Snyder's position, you could tell people are a little uncomfortable, walking into the Bill Snyder Family Stadium and with this guy's statue out front. And but it also it's a benefit because Travis was very aware of our track program. Cliff Revelto had a reputation of track across not only the country but internationally, right? And so you get a higher quality of candidates because they see that success. They see the facilities. They see what we've built here over time, and they want to be a part of that. So you get probably a better quality of candidate that's got a little bit more confidence to step in that situation.
Absolutely.
And so I think, and they're ready, in terms of Jason. I mean, he was ready to be a head coach, and you could just see it in the interview, and he was excited about, obviously he was going to walk in the Morgan family volleyball arena, but you can just get a sense of that in the interviews. And you can also get a sense of somebody who's, I'm not real sure if I want to take this job.
Absolutely.
So but it helps to have the success of those previous coaches build the program, and so then you get a higher quality candidate to be interested.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that's been shown over the course of the last decade or so, which is some of the hires we've been able to make because of the success that we've had. Now, a couple more lighthearted questions to finish this thing off. What's the hardest part about being an athletic director at a Power 5 institution?
I don't know. I think right now, just this crazy world in which there's so many unknowns. I've always been, prided myself on if somebody walks in my office to be able to give them an answer, right? Yep, I think we should do this, or coach, this is what we've done before. But the frustrating thing right now is probably not being able to provide those concrete answers that they're looking for, right? They're looking for you to say, okay, what are we doing, Gene?
Yep.
And it's not just me, it's us as an administration. And that probably right now is the most frustrating thing is that uncertainty of I don't know if I have an answer for you right now. And yet, like we said earlier, it's coming at us fast and furious. Generally there's not a lot that I've been doing it a long time now, and I think I've managed the stress of this job a lot better over the years. And if you knew me, if you knew that Gene Taylor took over North Coast State, he had some stressful moments there, But I think just right now, it's just the uncertainty of not having that answer when somebody walks in your office.
Absolutely. Now, the question that you probably get asked the most, when will alcohol be sold throughout Bill Snyder Family Stadium?
There it is. We're still talking about it.
Does the playoff expansion change that? Let's say, hypothetically, the Cats have a great season and somehow we're able to host a first round.
Well, if you think about it, during COVID, we sold alcohol in the stadium.
That's right.
We didn't have pass outs. Now, granted, it was 25% capacity as opposed to full capacity. But it's another one of these conversations that we have to have because it's a revenue generator, right? And it's something that, we do have alcohol sales in the stadium. Obviously, we've got a couple of locations, but you can't leave. Obviously, we've had in the premium areas for a long time. We've been selling alcohol. All of our other venues, full-time basketball, baseball, soccer. So I think it's time for us to really sit down and nail this decision, which direction we're going to go. But it's probably sooner rather than later.
Some people will be very happy to hear that. Some won't. So I envy whoever's taking your phone calls the day when that decision is made, because I'm sure you'll be getting...
Poor Vicky, she gets a lot of the first line of defense.
Okay, so we touched on this a little bit earlier, but with the completion of the Olympic training facility in the volleyball arena, are there any capital projects, small or large, on the horizon?
The only one we've talked about and not had any serious conversation with architects is our men and women's golf program first. We'd like to build them a clubhouse. their own clubhouse, and so they've got their locker rooms and be somewhere up at Colbert Hills with, near the driving range, so they can do everything, and then it gives them the freedom of being able to have their own space. But I don't know that project's $5-6 million, I don't know, but it's not going to be $30, $40, $50 million. But it's something that we've talked about. We know, and then there's some stuff that are not small items. We want to upgrade the East clubs or the East Side suites, and that's not a small number. But in terms of these massive 50, 60, 70, there's nothing on the docket.
Again, good problem to have.
Yeah, it really is.
Are there any goals that you want to check off your list before your time is done at K-State?
Well, I'd like to make it to the end of my contract, which would be good.
2030, is that 2030 or 2031?
2030, something like that. I don't know. But I think, really, and when I said this to a group the other day I spoke to, I said, what's driving me now is to put us in a position to figure out this new world of college athletics. And again, it's not just me. We've got a great staff, and put us in a position that we can do whatever we need to do to be successful, whether that's full revenue sharing or partial or the scholarships, getting this all figured out. So the day I walk out, somebody walks in and doesn't have, just a mess to deal with.
Absolutely.
That's ultimately one of my biggest goals, is to put us in a position that we can continue to operate like we have, to give our coaches and our athletes the best that we can provide them so they can be successful. And the next person comes in and goes, okay, this is in a pretty good spot. Let's continue to build on it.
Absolutely. What do you want your legacy to be at K-State when your time is finished?
Oh, I don't know. I don't really think about that much. I think, obviously, one of the things that I think people would hopefully look back and say, he was pretty good at hiring people. Mm-hmm. And, it was a person that was approachable and enjoyed life and enjoyed working in this business. And if that's the best thing that I can be remembered for, that'll be awesome. Because then those coaches may still be here and still be having a lot of success.
Absolutely. Well, let's finish this off on a high note. So obviously we've enjoyed a lot of success the last couple of years at K-State. You talk about a 2022 Big 12 championship football team, Sugar Bowl team, 2023 Elite Eight basketball team. Volleyball had a great first year in their arena last year. Should have made the NCAA tournament. Women's basketball hosts the first two rounds of the tournament here, and then baseball goes to a super regional for the second time in school history.
I should probably just drop the mic at that point.
Exactly. And so, and you talk about, Naismith Coach of the Year and Jerome Tang, first round draft pick and Kalen Culpepper, just all kinds of success across the board. What makes you confident that level of success is going to be the standard at K-State, and that we're not done reaching those heights? I
think it's because of the coaches we have in those positions, because they drive me to make sure that, gee, we need to keep doing this, we need to keep thinking, and they keep pushing, and that's what I'd rather have. I'd rather have a coach that pushes me or pushes us administratively, so that we're not sitting there on our hands going, oh, we're doing pretty well. I think, to me, as long as these coaches are here, and you bring in Travis now, and he's looking at this facility setup going, we can be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 track program in the country. So that kind of confidence as coaches makes me confident we can continue to do it. Now, we have to give them the resources, and that's what we've talked about today. We need to, once we do that, I think we're in pretty good shape, because these coaches are doing a great job.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure.
I know you've had a crazy summer, and hopefully you get a little time here before football season and the sports season to catch your breath. But thanks for all that you do, and thanks for your time today.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Curry.
That's it for this episode of Cats Talk. Thanks for tuning in. K-State family, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cats Talk, hosted by Wildcat NIL. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, or even leave a 5-star review. And please follow us on social media. Your support makes it so that these conversations are possible. If you're looking for more information on NIL, please visit www.catsnil.com. Thanks for your support, and go Cats.